Welcome. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for, what day is it? Wednesday, March 18th. I'm so used to being here on Mondays. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the full year 26-27 proposed budget. Megan, would you take roll call, please?
Trustee Briggs?
Here.
Trustee Banaski?
Hello.
Trustee Woiga?
Hiya.
Trustee Nazarian?
Here.
Mayor Nabaratz?
Here. I think they adjusted the microphones. We can probably push them further away because they're pretty loud. But that's great. Thank you to the team for working on those. So tonight we have 2 items underneath new business. And we're going to start with the full year 2026-2027 proposed budget presentation. And Village Manager White is going to take us through that. For anybody who might be joining along, tonight the budget is not posted, but there will be a link on the budget page tomorrow morning where you can find the same budget that we're reviewing this evening as an electronic file, and you should be able to check it out yourself. So take it away, Village Manager White.
Testing. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for meeting. I'm pleased to present with you the proposed fiscal year 26-27 budget. The stuff in front of you, eat it. Jean went out and got you guys some snacks. I told her that I said, we got to keep these guys awake for about an hour. That's all we need. The 2 hours that we normally do, I don't think it's going to be required today. I think we'll be okay. But it's something to treat on, and we can kind of take a look at what's going on here with this proposed budget. You know, one of the things that, just to preface this process, is this year, you know, it's nothing, we're not doing anything new that we normally do. Like a lot of the things that we generally talk about, we're generally discussing how this budget works, how the process works, and those types of things. I'm going to try to cursory gonna go through those a little bit, but we're not gonna go dive into some of that stuff that we normally get into as if we're kind of lecturing or teaching about how budgeting happens in 101 and financial forecasting. I want you to ask questions when you have them. This is a conversation. This is not me just sitting up here talking. It's your budget. We're giving you proposals and recommendations on spending plans and operational plans for your guidance, right? But as we always state, this is your budget. We want you to, and we know that we've lived on this for 2.5 months. We're tired of talking about it. But for you guys, this is a very new process and a new thing that you're looking at. So we encourage you, so after today, make sure you totally review that budget book, right? Go through it. Should you have questions between now and next Monday or beyond, send me an email, come in and sit down and have a conversation, myself or Megan. Whatever it is that you like. I don't care how minimal you think it might be. If you have that question, I'm sure some of your other colleagues do too. And we'll make sure we get those answers to you very, very quickly so that you can have informed information for the decision making that you're going to have as our budget reviews meetings start up next Monday and Wednesday. But I want you to do that. Do not go through this process with a question or saying, hey, what is this like? Why are we doing this? We'll explain it in very detail, especially for Trustee Nazarian being new. We did have an opportunity last week to kind of go through the entire existing budget and kind of get a familiarity with it. But you'll find through this spending plan, which is different from others, is there's always some of these outliers, especially when it comes to expenses that are really driving the budget, and then, you know, revenues the same way. This is a fairly simplified budget for what's happening here. You're not going to be pizzazzed with like, oh, we got this next streetscape project that we can ramp up for. We got a plan around the entire organizational structure with it. We're doing the back to the basics with this budget. That might all change should we be successful in the DRI. And we're hoping that you're rubbing elbows with all your state legislators that it might have an impact on that decision making. We were hoping we would have that now so we can incorporate engineering or any other plans that we might have. That DRI had 2 or 3 or 4 public projects in it that were proposed. So we wanted to be able to kind of start facilitating some of that, but that hasn't materialized yet. We're hopeful in the next week or two There might be some communication with respect to who might be successful in the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council region, which is us, okay? But anyway, we're gonna talk about 3 or 4 of those major expenditures that you're very familiar with respect to health insurance, retirement, labor, debt service, that are really driving this year's budget. It's not a unique thing for Fairport or any other local government. Those are natural things, but it's learning how to work within those confines, manage those costs to the best of your ability. And on the revenue side, you'll find, you guys know that sales tax and real property taxes almost make up, I think, 73 to 74% of our budget. I think it's 47% in the property tax, 23% in sales, I believe. All the rest, which is about the other 25%, is your revenue stream that you get to control. 50% of that the real property tax is something you don't really want to touch, right? Nobody does. And sales tax, you don't get to control it at all. So one you control fully, the other one you don't. So you have 25% of your revenue that you can either make or break or add upon or try to diversify any way you can, right? So nothing real big about it, but we'll get into some of those things. So again, thank you for this board, for the opportunity to do this, to stand before you, to be able to provide you guys with some recommendations and guidance. A lot of work went into this thing. You guys should be proud of this budget. You should be proud of this organization, the things that we're doing, the types of capital work that's being designed and constantly invested into this community, the depreciation that's happening with all of the assets and utilities. It's second to none for a community this size. We're probably looking at in relation to how other local governments work. You guys are killing it. You're doing a good job. You should have your heads held high because we're doing it. We have a great spending plan. Our capital plan is funded. It's competent. It's materializing. We're continually investing in what we do, and not just from the infrastructure side, but the good community asset stuff, the placemaking things, right? The things that make us different from every other government that's trying to do great things to make their village stand out in a time when it's really challenging. All right, I have to do this every year, and it's important because our leadership team is not a person. It is not my vision. It is not Megan's. It's not always yours, right? It is something that kind of comes up. These folks do a great job, and these are just pictures for us with the department heads, but people within their departments and how they run them, their expectations, their structures, their support systems, they're doing an amazing, amazing job. I couldn't be more proud of the folks that we work with, and this team puts together this budget, these spending plans, these recommendations, and comes through and says, hey, we can deliver. We can do this for you, and they do it. They're amazing. They're not fake smiling either. We didn't Photoshop them. They're amazing. All right, the budget book that you have before you, you've seen it before. It's the way we kind of do it. A big thing, if I could tell you, of all of the stuff that's in there, everything is in there. I don't care if it's financial policies, org charts, line item budgets from your true like right down, I'm buying binoculars, I'm buying water, I'm buying whatever. That's all in there. It's all public, your general fund, your capital fund. But read that budget message. It's boring, yes. Does it change a lot? No, but our organization doesn't change. So you can't make it drastically different every year. You can't make it sexier than what it was before. But what it does is it takes a 200-page document that you have before you and pumps about 6 or 7, it reduces to about a 6 or 7-page summary that tells you basically what's going on. What were the alterations? What were the significant changes that happened? And what you should be looking at. I mean, it literally outlines the $606,000 in additional spending this year, what makes all that up, right? So you're not out there digging through 200 pages to find it. It is there, and it's written in a way that you can just look through that quickly and kind of get an idea or a philosophy about what's happening, what you can expect when you go through this budget. Okay, so the general fund, all of you know, and Sarah knows this now, general fund is the fund in which you operate with. All revenues, accounts receivables, your expenses, your liabilities, all of that is included in the general fund with respect to operations in your capital plan, okay? Getting into revenues, right? Revenues, expenses within that general fund. We discussed a lot of this already, but your real property taxes, of the $8,277,000 proposed spending plan that's before you right now, the revenues associated with that is $3 million. The real property tax revenues are $3,723,000, right? That makes up about 47% of your realized revenue, right? And that is realized because the moment you guys adopt the budget, right? The end of the fiscal year happens May 31. June 1, Megan hits print, tax bills go out. It's one of these nice things that you're getting 50% of your realized revenue a month within to your fiscal year. Trustee Briggs?
Is that slide in the packet?
Yes, ma'am. It should be right under revenues. Okay. The next thing is sales tax. That's your other big one. It's the one that you have no control over, completely market-based. We're hopeful. The moment we put this in and we put this proposed budget together and we're ready to hit print, you start seeing market changes and anomalies and impact factors like wars, things like that, oil prices, how people look at oil as somehow a way to budget their money. It's an anomaly that's not so much of an anomaly anymore. People do it. They do realize of that. And all the rest of your major ones, fire protection and on down. So a lot of those are pretty stable. They don't change a whole lot really at all. So concentrating on that 25% in future where you can start to add or diversify revenue is always a good thing. Okay? This isn't a different chart that if I were to take the last 5 or 6 years and put them together, you're constantly going to see a trending analysis that's very continuous with what you're seeing here. Okay? We just spoke about real property taxes. The big thing what's going on here, and this is really kind of the safe. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I think that's the same amount that we had every year, right? That's because that's where the budget center is for AIM. The extra 20 grand that you're referring to is not included in that because that's not how the state looks at that number. It is in the budget though. Okay. Right? I know that's what you were looking for. Where's that 20 grand? Don't you worry, it's in there. 29 and change. Yes, it is. I can guarantee you that it's in there. And by the way, I did send a thank you text to both of our state representatives. Good. So unfortunately, they like to label it under this beautiful temporary aid. So it's listed as that. I don't like the word temporary because it's something we don't get to count on. So when it's not temporary next year and it goes away, it's 20 grand. It's a hole in the budget because we've already factored that in, right? So you got work to do with your lobbying efforts to keep that, take the temporary out of that. But it is in there. I can assure you of that. Okay. So sales tax. Generally, and I'll be honest, Megan and I are pretty conservative with respect to sales tax. You never know what's going to happen. It does fluctuate throughout the regions throughout the year. We're anticipating about 4% for over what we budgeted last year for our projected year end, over that number. And then over that projection of that extra 4% from what we budgeted this current year, right? We were a little lower than what we probably could have gone. Another 3.5% for next year. So we're talking about a 7.5% to 8% swing with rounding from last year's budget, so adopted budget anyway. So that's really a contributing factor to how we're able to kind of fund some of the things that we're doing, and it has been a saving grace this year for this budget. This year it does have a spending plan of over $600,000. That 600 grand has made up a lot of those 4 or 5 categories I talked about with respect to retirement and health insurance. Debt service is a driver in this one. Healthcare, and then traditional labor costs, but really across the entire budget, every budget center, right? Any place that has commodities that you're purchasing are all on the rise. They just are. That's not something that's unique. Again, you'll see it in your own household budgets and anything else that you buy, okay? So that's a good thing. I hope they materialize and it continues to do that and people have consumer confidence in the market to keep spending because that's what's driving that number. But you're talking about an adopted budget of a little over $2,050,000 to almost $2,250,000. That's a $200,000 increase in revenue just from that one line item. Massive. If we didn't have that and you had to make that up in a tax levy increase, you're looking at about 3% for every, 80,000, somewhere around there. So you'd be looking at a 6 to 7.5% increase in the levy just to make up from that sales tax number, that revenue not materializing the way we projected it. Okay, so we haven't seen stuff like this in a while. A lot of it, I think, is due to when you have costs that continue to go on a rise. Sales tax is 8% of whatever that cost rises every single year, so it's just naturally gaining momentum and coming up with more revenue throughout the county. Fire protection services, those are continue to, that's the contract we have for giving fire protection services, to the town of Parenton. That's continuation. That number only grows from 775 to 790, which is not a lot, but it's based on true expenditures that we have for the adopted fire budget, right? They pay, what is it, 75% of whatever those expenses are. So if those go up, they pay that extra amount, right? And that's how the contract works. So nothing really there, but there, if our revenue is going up, means our expenses are going up too. So they kind of net neutral to an extent. Pilots. Pilots are payment in lieu of taxes. You'll see that the pilots did go up from 215 to 240. While that's a revenue, it's not really a great revenue, right? Pilots means that there are, instead of you're having your taxes being paid through your tax bill at full assessed value, you're being paid at a subsidized or an abated rate, correct? You'll see a new pilot on here, 58 South Main Street, which is your Bonnie and Clyde, right? The old Bank of America building that is on the tax roll that does have a pilot for that project. And that's why you're seeing that new 58 South Main as a pilot. So while it says an increased revenue there, there's a reduction in revenue that comes from your taxes, right? Because that's no longer in the taxable assessed value coming in through taxes alone through a tax bill. Okay? And none of the other pilots have changed from what we have in the past. Oh, yes. So 25 Parse is the cannery. 75 North Main is like it's the building to the south of the cannery. So it's like the pickleball building. It's the building where the new Mexican restaurant's going to be. That's being built out right now at the frontage to Main. You know, the sheet metal building, the old, yes, ma'am, on the south side. 56 West is the
Those are the apartments.
right
Yeah,
next to like the
56.
Moonlight.
And then 52, 54
They're
was
all
that
same
whole new
complex.
development,
Yep.
yeah. Right off of West Street, what was it, the old telephone building?
It is.
And then
Frontier.
the other one used to have like a daycare in it. But now
It's the old
apartments,
60s
yeah.
that got redeveloped through the Joel Bartlett development. Really nice. 121 South Main is.
That's the, I recall it the old Shaheen's, the,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Post office, and then formally.
It's correct. And 58 South Main being now Bonnie and Clyde's currently.
And then the two cannery properties this year, for the last 5 years, they've been
Correct.
calculated using the assessed valuation of what the cold storage it used to be.
The
This is
existing
the-
assessment before the improvements
Yeah.
were done.
And now that we're in the first year where it's starting to kick up, it's like 20% of the new assessed value. So that's also causing the increase in pilots.
Right, so it's at 60% of assessed value, so those pilots were on a 10-year pilot. So what happens is, it's the 10 of that pilot, we've discussed these before, is to subsidize those taxes so that the development has an opportunity to succeed and realize potential without being burdened by what might seem to be excessive taxes, right? For lack of a better term. And then so it's a 10-year, so the first 5 years, say the building was worth or assessed at $200,000, right? But they put $1 million into that building as the development, then put it on the rolls, right? So you would think that now, in theory, that'd be a $1.2 million building. It doesn't really work that way. So instead of being taxed at $1.2 million, the moment it opens up, it's still being taxed at $200,000. So what happens is, the first 5 years, it stays at that assessed value. On the 6th year, it goes up to 60% of that value. Then the 7th year, 70, 80, 90. So at the full 10-year mark, it'll be assessed at the full actualized, full assessed value. So the 1.2 million, or whatever the assessor has assigned to that structure. Does that make sense? And that's a very traditional pilot agreement. Not all of them work that way. A lot of them are customized, but that's what we're referring to today. Okay, any other questions on pilots? All right. Rental of real property, those are fairly consistent. Those things consist of like contracts we have for our cell tower agreement, other things of that nature. You'll see a little bit of a dip in that this year from what we had previous years, and that's just due to we've been notified that Dish Network, which is one of our leasees on that cell tower, is choosing to be removed. So we're not anticipating that revenue moving forward in next year. So we'll have to go out and see if we can find some other folks we can partner with. We have space there if you want to like put a tent up or do a radio station or a blog or something like that. So we'll give you a discount. Fund balance. So continuation of revenues. Fund balance is unfortunately one of those things where what we're looking at for this budget, it's when you have revenues and expense and you want to spend more than you're actually getting in revenues, one of your other options to fill that gap or that delta in the budget is to use fund balance. Fund balance, for layman's terms and people watching today, is your savings account. It's unassigned fund balance, means it hasn't been appropriated, assigned, or been earmarked for any other use than just rainy day funds. When I need it, we use it, okay? This year, we're proposing $147,000 of fund balance, right, savings, to balance this budget. Now, why are we doing that? So a couple things are happening. One is debt service. So of the $117,000 is debt service, loan payments, right? So what's happening is we planned this where, when we've talked about this before from a financial strategy, you want to plan to incur new debt when old debt is coming off the books, right? You've built in to your expense plan, your levy, a certain debt load that you're willing to carry, right? And continue to operate in the confines of how you normally do in your taxation model. We have, this year, the streetscape debt is coming on, right, for about $117,000. But we also have one more year of some existing debt at $114,000 that has one more year until it falls off or gets paid off, okay? So what would have happened is if we didn't appropriate that one-time revenue to subsidize that 117 this year, what you'd be doing is you would artificially tax for that extra $117,000 this year, right? And then next year you would artificially bring that levy back down, the amount of money you raised by taxes, the levy, down by $117,000, right? Because that debt's falling off, right? So instead of just doing that to artificially go up and down, which you don't want to do, one-time revenue and fund balance is good for that one-time expense because it's going to go away next year. So I think our proposal is to do that. It's a smart way to use that money. We have it. We're not in a position where we are eroding at our fund balance prematurely, right? And then, so the other $30,000 on top of that 117 is nothing more than a tax levy reduction, right? It brought us down from, I think, 4.6 to like 4.2 or something like that with respect to our proposal. We wanted to get it as close to that 4% as we could, and that's what we chose to do. And you're still sitting around that 30% of fund balance, which is right in within the confines of the fund balance policy that you guys have set forth, okay? Any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward. Generally, we don't use our fund balance, which is good. When we appropriate that to fund balance, this year we will use it. Maybe not the $30,000 that we've appropriated, but the 117 we will, because that is being used for to cover a debt payment for this year until that debt is paid off, right? This is just nothing more than a chart showing that fund balance, but you're seeing, for a lack of a term, this is your proposed budget of $8.2 million, right? What we talked about. We're appropriating or using $147,000 right there. So 20% of that 8.2 is 1.6, and 30% of that 8.2 per policy is 2.4. With this budget and everything that's being proposed, we'll still have 2.5 million in fund balance, which is about 30 grand over the fund balance policy. Nothing significant.
Just as a refresher, what is our policy for fund balance?
Fund balance, your policy is you want to, on average, have, based on your adopted expenses, you want to have at least 20% of that adopted expense load, right, or liability in the bank at the minimum and 30% at the maximum, right? And we're always in that between that 25 to 33% range. And it's not something you really want to road out or play out. You want to kind of keep it there. Fund balance, if you're truly utilizing it and it does materialize where it doesn't, you know, we don't spend everything we said we were going to do and it doesn't materialize, but if we do, it's hard to, you're never going to tax enough or more than you need to in order to build that savings back up, right? It's challenging politically. No one wants to do that, right? So it continues to erode. So this does a really good job of doing that. And then also, you know, it's good for your comptroller, your fiscal stress scores. We got ours the other day. We should be at 0. We're at a number 3. They don't even start marking it till like a 50 range, so it's really unclassified, and that's just due to how we have to show our
Using the use of reserves,
it's really how it's shown.
yeah.
We've already went down the rabbit hole on this internally, but it just aggravates. It doesn't change anything, but I want to see a 0 there more for my mindset and her mindset. And we've been at 0 forever, but how we have to show this money, because we're unique in the fact that we have a real capital plan, a fund, and a reserve that funds that. So everything's not funneling through the general fund the way normal people do it. I say normal people do it. I think we're doing it the correct way. Operations should live on its own merit, capital should live on its merit, and it should show that divide, right? And it should be that way. And because of that, and the state wants to, especially for the classification, when we submit this in, everything goes into a formula that's set forth. It's supposed to be a one-size-fits-all, how they want to show a fiscal score, or it's called fiscal stress monitoring of every municipality and state. And because it doesn't fit comfortably within that Excel spreadsheet, if you will, we get kind of this.
They classify a transfer out of a reserve, which is money we've built up sitting there, as an operating expense. So years where we used a significant amount of reserve, they just lump it in with other expenses, and it looks like we have a deficit in the calculation, which we did not. So it's just frustrating.
Well, we got it about a week ago, and it
Yeah.
said 3 for the 2 years in a row now, which is nothing. I mean, they don't even touch it till you get to 50, and then they start saying, hey, maybe you have some fiscal stress. Start looking at what you're doing and how you're operating, right? We are probably in the top 1%.
So I would just like you to, because I've been here for the entire time since 2019, have we always been sitting at 30%? I'm asking you a pointed question because I know the answer.
We've been,
When I came in 2019, I think it was
think we've
closer
been-
to 25.
we've been between like 28 and 35.
Yeah.
Depending what it is, but you gotta remember how we look at it. It's not that we're sitting on, I don't want you to walk away from this, I say this every year and I'll keep saying it. I don't want you to walk away thinking that because we're sitting above 30%, somehow we've overtaxed the public, right? And that why are we raising taxes when we're sitting on this fund balance when we should use that to reduce the levy and give the taxpayers a break, right? That's the thing that's gonna come in your head. It's not accurate. We've got to remember, if you're reducing a tax levy this year artificially with one-time revenue or fund balance, cash reserves, then you have to continue to do that next year. So if you fill a budget gap this year, so say this year you say, you know what, let's give these guys a break. And I don't disagree with it. I'm just merely saying, you want to do 100 grand? Well, guess what? Next year, you still have that 100 grand hole. So you better have another 100 grand to fill that gap next year because it's built in now, right? And then plus anything you want to do next year. So budget holes don't go away, they carry on, right? So it doesn't mean that you're doing that. But what we do with this is like, listen, if these start, and we do it every year, you guys pass something, I think in February or March, where we appropriate $600,000 from here, and we put it right into the capital reserve. So when this starts to get up there, we take that one-time excess revenue and you put it into one-time expenses associated with capital, right? And you have that ability as a legislative body to do that at your purview any given time you want to, right? So it's never just sitting there idle and we're just like, let it sit up there and we're overtaxing and we're sitting on $2.5 million. Like, what are we doing on a $8 million budget? No. Take that money when it's appropriate and you think that, hey, what we're doing is sustainable. The next 2 years, I don't think we're going to have to do a lot of fund balance appropriations. So I think it's safe because once you take money out of here and you put it into a capital reserve, it has to stay there, right? It's not like you kind of take it out and like the stock market, I'll invest today, I'll cash out tomorrow, I'll put it back in tomorrow when the market's hot. Once it's there, it's kind of there, right? So you don't want to have that constant fluctuation. But you guys have that purview saying, hey, we need to fund some of this stuff. We have this extra cash. Let's throw it into capital. And we've done that since its inception, right, to keep that where it's at. But I wouldn't just say every year anything above that 30%, you go out and do that. Like right now, it'd be easy to say take that 29.7, which you can, and let's further reduce that levy. That's fine, but you don't know what's going to happen next year. You don't know if sales tax is going to materialize the way we planned on it. with the fluctuation in the market economy that's going on right now. I mean, the moment we made that decision, we turn on the news the next morning and all this other stuff starts to happen. If you don't think that's going to have a massive impact on sales tax calculations, it's going to. I already promise you. I almost want to pull it back already. But it's presented and it was printed and it's done.
I can also say that nobody else on this board was here during March of 2020. Megan and Brian and I were, and when you, every week, every other day, I would hear, okay, we're planning that the worst possible scenario from 2008. And then the next day, okay, we've decided that it's going to be worse than 2008, and we're going to give you this next scenario. And that went on
you're
for a
trying
long
to
time
prejudge
because you're trying to judge
market.
something that you've not
It's a moving
ever
target.
experienced in modern history.
And you got to go with your gut, right? And certain
Yeah.
things materialize, certain things don't. But that was a very short window, and when there was that shutdown and nothing happened for 4 months, and it started to ramp up. But we didn't know what was going to happen. No one's experienced anything like that before, so you kind of go with the worst, and I'd rather come out better than worst, right? So that's how we planned for it. And the beauty is that I think we taxed kind of high that one year, but the next year when things materialized better than normal, we gave it back in a further subsidy of, instead of raising taxes next year at 7%, we did at 2%, right? Because we had gotten that extra
zero.
money. So yeah, so it's not like it all washes out. It net neutrals, over time. So, but that's where we're at with fund balance. Does that make sense to you guys? I mean, you understand what's going on there a little bit? So I just don't want you to walk away thinking that somehow we're overtaxing or it's just sitting there and, these guys are a little conservative and they don't want to mess with it and they rather play safe than sorry with somebody else's money. That's not accurate. And you have the purview to move that or do anything with it at any given time. It could be, priorities and things change all the time. You guys can say tomorrow, hey, this is a new idea. This is a new thing. We want to respond to it. Do we have cash to do it? Or can we use some of this for that? And you have that ability with the balance that you have right now, okay? Your financial forecasts that are built into this budget for the next 2 years, they always seem to materialize pretty close to where we project. I mean, almost within 1% every single year. So they're accurate. You're at 25% in 2 years, right? And that's still taxing at 4 to 5% every single year. And that's if sales tax continues to materialize the way it's planned right now. That's a big if. You don't get to control that. Okay? Any questions? All right, expenses. So again, it's a balanced budget. So if your revenues are $8,277,000, so are your expenses.
Go back to
Right.
page 27.
Balanced budget is required by New York State law. We don't have to give you a balanced budget when we propose it, but then that would just be giving a headache for us, so we choose to do that. This chart looks no different than anything else. It's not a reflection of a person or something costing more. It's just Public Works and Police Department are our biggest departments. They're labor intensive, right? So they cost more. That's okay. With health insurance, contribution to capital reserves, retirement, and other personnel-related costs being the major drivers in some of our expense load. That will continue to be the case indefinitely, no matter what. We're going to breeze through some of these. So a lot of these are just kind of status quo, but we went through kind of all the budget centers like we normally do. Nothing big going on with the Board of Trustees budget. What you're seeing, though, is just that projected year-end and next year's budget a little higher than what we had budgeted last year. It's solely associated with doing audits and so forth, and federal audits associated with streetscape and those types of things, okay? We had to spend a little bit more than what we had budgeted for in order to do that. We had the Streetscape grant, which is a federal grant, required a federal audit. That's always $5,000 to $10,000 more on top of your $20,000 to $25,000 audit that you do every fiscal year anyway. Okay. The village manager's budget, that's strictly personnel and training related. Nothing moving there. There's nothing added into the budget than what you see. Clerk treasurer's budget, same thing. A little higher than what it was last year, and it's, again, personnel related, but also the debt financing costs, which we're still getting an email about that every single day from our bond counsel. There's legal representation associated with helps you taking out a loan. You would think it'd be as simple as you going out to Pittsburgh Federal Credit Union or whatever your associated bank with is and say, hey, let me sit down here and fill out an application online and you send me money, right? I could be borrowing $50,000 or $5 million, and it's a 6-month process. It takes $30,000 in legal fees and an act of God to do it, and it really does. I don't really mind it. I know why it's there. It wants to make sure that, hey, if you were going to secure residents and taxpayers with liabilities for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're doing it responsibly, it makes sense, and you have the ability to pay that later, right? Because once you saddle the future residents of this community with something, it needs to make sense, right? So they make you go through a very big process. And do you have the ability to pay that back, right? What's your collateral? What's your cash to debt ratio? What's your fund balance associated with that? Drastically changes your interest rates that you are provided when that bond is sold on the open market and somebody buys it. We're getting this probably around 3.5 to 4.5.
Yeah, they gave us a budget of 5 for the upcoming one, so we have to see, that's in end of May.
I'm
to see
hoping
where
that's going to be a
the
little
bids come in.
lower for borrowing costs. We have been very used to, you have been very used to 1% interest rates. We refinanced everything 8 years ago now or something like that. Everything that we had on the debt, we went out and refinanced it, kicked butt. We got all our bond ratings up. Remember that? We're running AA+, which is amazing for a $7.5 million budget with I think the restrictions and our ability to provide diversification and revenue. I'm very proud of that. But you got to protect that. If you were to erode at that fund balance policy, it doesn't mean that you're poor or anything else. That drastically changes that bond number, the interest number that's associated with that bond. People want a secured loan. And bonds are pretty safe in general, right? They're backed by the federal government, all those things. Okay? Central garage, that's where Central garage is a bureaucrat term of fixing and repairing equipment and vehicles and those types of things and keeping the fleet in a good operational order. That's fairly flat, nothing big there. We have if something breaks, regardless if you budget or not, you got to go fix it, right? So you're going to see some ups and downs in that and unplanned events. But on average, it's about $250,000 a year. And that's just on the general fund side, or what we call the village side. Does not include Fairport Electric, which is probably running about another $250,000 to maintain that fleet. Okay. Public Works, one of the bigger budgets. It's about $65,000 more than last year. A lot of it's labor related. We have a lot of personnel going through STEP programs because they're a younger workforce. We also have, for projected year ends, we had a pretty cold winter. When it snows here or it ices up, it only does it at night and on the weekends. That continued to trend this year that same way. So it accrues overtime, right? Which is fine. I think these guys this year were so worn out, they were praying for none of that, and generally they want it. But you'll see in some of that. But, in addition, there's, about another 20 or 30,000 within that as well for just basic operational expenses that are happening within that budget that need to happen. It quite frankly needs more. Jason is in dire need of professional project management and assistance. If you've seen him lately, and I'm sure he's probably watching because he told me he was, so hi. He's stressed out. He needs some help. You're going to see an extra labor person associated with code enforcement when we get to that we're proposing. But, it's one of these things where, I keep telling him and others, like, you don't have to apologize for maybe able to not meet everything you do. The only thing I'm asking you is take the resources that the board provides you, maximize that potential and that efficiency, and move on, right? That's all that you can do. And be comfortable with whatever that outcome and output is. Jason aims to please, and his team aims to please. He wants to keep doing it, but at what expense and longevity, right? I don't want burnout to happen. But they're doing an amazing job. I don't have to speak for it. If you look in this community and see what's going on from a public works standpoint, an infrastructure standpoint, and a beautification standpoint, it's happening, right? And it looks really, really good. So we're doing a good job, and he is too, and I'm proud of him. IT, it's always all over the place. One of the big things with this driver is it's going up a little bit more, but what we're looking at is, we third party with integrated systems. They're here now, but we're looking at bringing an IT manager to assist kind of a little more locally to help out and help, the burden from the admin side. When you contract something out, it doesn't mean that it's just off your plate, right? If you go out and get professional services or an engineering firm to do a roadway, it's not like, oh, well, that's MRB or BME's time or Labella's time. They're going to take care of it. Someone's liaison on that all day long. Someone's facilitating that work. So whenever they're doing something, you're right there with them because they need you as the client to provide information, to give feedback, to provide guidance and structure, all those things. So you're right there with it. So you may be pushing out some of that work, but you're in it all day long. I mean, Adam can speak to how that works. And this is the same way. So that person will come in. It's not a one-for-one. It's almost somewhat of a net neutral because you're taking some of those hours that are be utilized from a third-party consultant to assist with information technology services, and that's just coming in to an internal person, right? So that's going to be happening very soon, and you're seeing some of that in this budget. Fire department, it's basic fire department expenses, nothing big. The big thing with what you're seeing in this budget is some turnout gear replacement schedules. Turnout gear is just not a one-for-one. It matters about your size, your fit, what they have on the books. When it expires, it's on a 10-year rotation. So maybe this year was something where 30% instead of 10% of the turnout gear was on that 10-year cycle, right? So it's being replaced, and that's all scheduled out by the fire department. They've done a really good job. You'll see your projected year end for this year is almost matches what the budget was for last year or the current year we're in. That is it's an attaboy to them with the purchase order system that's in place, them tracking and being financially good stewards of operational budgets and money and those types of things. Generally, we've had some challenges with that in the past. So they're doing a really good job with getting those numbers in, tracking that number, and we anticipate our projected year end to be in line with what the board adopted for the budget for this year. So that's really, really good. And remember, whatever that, if it's 313 that comes into this budget at the end, 75% of that is reimbursed by the town of Parenton. So while you saw that this number is a little bit higher, so is the revenue associated with the fire protection district as well. Okay. Police department, their budget came in the same as last year. The discrepancy, the difference you're seeing from the 1.4 to 1.45 is solely due to labor-related costs. We have put numbers in there to anticipate at some point a ratification of the existing collective bargaining agreement or CBA, and so we're planning for that in this budget. So we're not having to come back later, not take this into consideration, then you're taking an appropriation fund balance and meet that liability, right? So that's what you're seeing in this budget. Other than that, the operational needs are flat. Okay. Code enforcement. So it's a one-person department. We have not been from a resource standpoint, a one-person code enforcement department since I've been here over 10 years. It's always been more than a one-person job. You're seeing significant burnout in it. We've had 3 people in that position in the last 10 years, and the turnover hasn't been because they weren't good. They're burned out. It's too much to handle with one person. This budget has put in there a part-time individual that's either going to be a part-time building inspector or some type of administrative assistant to come in and assist in that office so that the code enforcement officer, building inspector, and fire marshal can concentrate on those bigger projects, bigger things. Just 1 or 2 of our properties in the village that has expended a lot of time with respect to that office is taken up 90% of that time just to manage those 2 significant properties that we've been dealing with and addressing. We're about to ramp up into construction season, need for building permits. They're coming in like clockwork now, like they normally do. So we're hopeful with this process, we're recruiting for another position downstairs with Fairport Electric, and we're hopeful with around the 30 applications that we got for that whatever doesn't materialize from that, we can maybe offer them something up here and help out. So, and there's some good candidates, so we're excited about that. It needs to happen. And this person will assist in the planning office, the code enforcement office, and even some backup work with Public Works if they have the time to do so. I think we put in, 20 hours a week on average? Is that what we did, something like that? Okay, so it's not a significant help. I think it's probably going to warrant more, but we're going to start somewhere. It's better than what we have today, but if we can take 20 hours of work off someone else's plate, that due diligence work, that admin work, that data entry, the software we utilize to put this stuff in is drastically lacking in getting the existing data and permits inputted into it. Needs to happen. This should help out a lot, and then we can kind of see what happens and what the needs are with the new person that's going to come in and take over. What do they want to see? What do they want to do? How do they want to operate? Trustee Briggs?
So the 141 is a full-time person and a 20-hour, which is half-time person?
Correct. Correct. Anything else with that? All right. Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning, and Historic Preservation, all three are under the auspice of the Planning Office. They're all flat. They're all very, very similar things that we do. The projected year end for the Zoning Board of Appeals is a little bit higher than we budgeted for, and that's the only reason we had some encumbrances associated with closing out the grant and some of the payments associated with Fisher and our consultants for the zoning code update. That's all done and expired, and we won't have to carry that moving forward. So all the rest of those are just administrative related dollars associated with, like, you know, advertising and running some of the board meetings and things of that nature, right? Nothing of significance. Legal costs, while they're there, they're generally, when we outsource that stuff, if there's some applicant related, they're reimbursed too. So there's a corresponding revenue line to go with that expense line with legal for all of these planning and zoning and historic preservation. Okay. New York State retirement. So this is one of the driving numbers for some of the budget increases that we're experiencing. And to no surprise, we're looking at from ERS. So there's two retirement systems that the village deals with. ERS is for every single employee that is here, including you, except for police and fire personnel. Though that's PFRS, or Police and Fire Retirement System. ERS is Employee Retirement System. The ERS rates are up 4%, and the average PFRS, or Police and Fire rates, are up 11%. They're always like that. The PFRS rates are always much higher. They're almost double. They are double from what ERS are. You got to remember, police and fire retirement systems are on a 20-year retirement actuary. ERS retirements are on a 30-year actuary, right? That's the difference in why those rates for police and fire have to be higher, because they retire at 10 years quicker than an ERS employee would, right? But anyway, those rates went up. I think collectively, we had a budget of, about $5,040. It's about $45,000 collectively between the two retirement counts from last year's budget to this year that we've had to absorb for those rates. We talk about this every year. I'm not going to go down the gripe hole that I normally do about how that's working, but if you're sitting at a Dow of 50,000 before the last 2 weeks and we're still having rate increases like this, what are those investment strategies? How does that work? But it also, when you do the actuaries, it looks at, well, how many people within the retirement system for police and fire or ERS are retiring that year? So if you have an average of 20,000 people a year retire from state retirement, maybe in police and fire, when the actuaries, they're anticipating 30,000 this year, right? So those rates have to come up more in order to meet that demand for withdrawals from the retirement system account for Albany. And that's how these actuaries work, and they're complicated. They actually published something not too long ago that kind of got into why these are. It lost me in page 5, I think, and it's a 75-page document. So, but that's what's going on there. We don't get a choice in any of that. They take our previous year's payroll totals, and they times that, those payrolls down to the dollar, times the anticipated ERS rate or PFRS rate they're going to push out statewide to get the money they need to meet the collective coffers of the state. And they send us a bill, and that's what we get. There's no negotiation. There's no nothing. And we do ours strictly off the true payroll. So it's not a projection. It's not a something, well, we think it's going to be this. It's pretty close to whatever we say it's going to be. It materializes that by the end of the year. Megan goes through that by account, by true personnel costs, versus, because they do send us a bill. We think it's going to be this based on X, and we actually go through it all and try to make sure it's right. And we've caught, like last year, I think we had a thing with police and fire, but it was about a $40,000 or $50,000 oversight by ERS that Megan and our team caught in order to reduce that burden for last year. So it's great. Health insurance, all things we've talked about. Premiums are going up 14% for next year. And we're budgeting about a 12.5% increase. I'm sorry, they went up 14% this year, 12.5% next year. It could be up to 15%. We don't know. We'll find that out in October, September, October, at our FLMHIT, our Finger Lakes Municipal Health Insurance Trust meeting. And then our projection was a little off for projected year end. That's why it's a little bit higher, because we budgeted 12.5% for the existing year's budget for health increases that you guys adopted, but it came in at 14, right? So that's what's going on there. But when you look at it from a $697,837, that's about $140,000 difference just in health insurance costs, right? That you're absorbing within this budget. Okay, so that's a big number that we grapple with. I'm not sure how anyone's going to sustain those types of increases to the health insurance industry. It's significant. I don't think there's an industry, a professional industry out there in the world that is allowed to raise rates between 10 and 20% a year, and that's okay. How can the costs associated with that be that different? But that's what we're experiencing. We wouldn't do any better if we were not a part of this trust that we're in, which is really a conglomerate. Trustee Nazarian and I talked about this, of where 20-ish municipalities go out, and it's like Costco. You're buying wholesale. We have design plans or line items of coverage that collectively between the 20 municipalities want to have and think that's important. And then you go out and bid those services. And so in this case, MVP is our third-party administrator that goes out and administers those plans on our behalf, but they're not off-the-shelf plans. Like, it's not like you going out and say, I need health insurance and this is what I get, because it's all in case. They're customized plans. They're not really much different than other plans, but they are customized plans. And MVP is our third-party administrator. So they look at, how do I facilitate all of these, pay for all of these liabilities associated, and still make somewhat of a little bit of a profit. But we know what that profit is, and it's not an extensive amount, because we look at truly the cost going out and the claims that came in, and what's that delta there, so we can negotiate good, favorable rates. But if we were to go out and say, I'm going to go out, in which there's two people you can get health insurance from here, Excelis and MVP. Those are people who have the market share here. Those are people who are going to bid on it. If you were to go out and say, hey, listen, I have 80 full-time employees, another 20 part-time or full-time equivalents here, give me favorable rates, you're at the mercy of that, because Excelis or MVP would just say, hey, I'll charge you what I want, and if you don't want that book of business or you think it's too high, I don't really need those 80 belly buttons that you're going to insure with us, right? But when you have something like this trust that is comprised of 2,800 belly buttons that you're insuring across the 20 or so municipalities, now you have market share, because that book of business now is worth $50 million. That's something that they're willing to negotiate with and sharpen their pencils with, not something that's just, hey, the Village of Fairport is not going to insure with us, right? Any questions on that? All stuff you've heard before. Other personnel costs, fairly similar to what we were doing last year. I mean, that's Social Security, it's workers' comp, firefighter cancer insurance, those types of things. You're seeing a fairly static workers' comp premium number. I do believe that will change next year, and Megan can tell me differently. We have some experience that's coming within the organization that's impacting these line items now. So when those rates go back to be reviewed and applied based on experience, that's your claims rate. I believe that might change a little bit for next year. So we'll have to really watch that and see what we need to plan for in order to meet that. I do believe that number will go up next year. One thing that we do have and the board established is we have a workers' comp reserve. I think it sits at about $200,000 to $250,000 in there. So we have the ability, should we get a significant number next year that we weren't planning for, to appropriate some money from that workers' comp reserve in an effort to alleviate some of that burden next year till we figure out what we do long term, right? But what you'll find is like workers' comp insurance, things like that, it's not generally a one-time bump in that experience rating. So next year, say it goes up 80 grand, it's going to stay there for a while. That experience takes a while to fall off the books, right? So once you inherit it, it's almost like if I get in a car accident and get a couple speeding tickets on your insurance, it's not like your insurance goes up for 1 year and then next year it's like I start over. It's like, hey, you got to show me over the course of the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years that you're a responsible driver. You're not going to have any more liabilities or claims, right? And then it might start to reduce. Workers' comp's the same way. Capital reserves. So our budget this year was $650,000. This is the amount of money that we put into the capital reserve, cash contributions from the general fund. This year it's at 706. That's solely due mostly to, and it was planned, it was in our budget and our forecast last year. We said we were going to do it. It was in your budget statements. We're putting in an extra $50,000 in cash from the general fund into the capital fund in an effort to fund those liabilities long-term. It's not a lot of money, but we plan to do that to keep that fund solvent and in the black, right? Because what was happening is if we kept it at the $400,000 that we were appropriating, instead of the $450,000 that we're proposing, as the 10-year plan shows the existing planned purchases, whether vehicles or projects or whatever, there was some areas where we went into the negative. So in order to massage that out, and it could be 7 years down the road, but we're planning for that by showing, hey, if we start to infuse something like $50,000 a year, well, in 7 years, that's now $350,000 in balance, right? That you've added to that, which keeps that in a very solvent rate, right? And an acceptable rate. Okay? And that will have to continue over time, and we're planning for that too. It's all in that 10-year plan about where this looks. Now, you can always take away expenses and projects or remove vehicles or things that you no longer do, and that could always move. But that capital plan is something where right now we could pull it up, add a project, and say, hey, listen, can we afford this? And what does it do to our capital fund? Does it put us in a deficit in 2 years? Or what does it do to the tax rate? Right now, we could pull it up and show you what that impact is and what that long-term impact and decision is. And right now, if you want to do something in let's plan for 5 years. We're going to go build the Eiffel Tower here. Well, let's start planning today and infusing money to see how much it's going to take in order to do that. And we have the ability in that active plan to make those decisions, see those outcomes. So this was planned. It was in our forecast. It's nothing new, right, in order to keep that fund going the way it's at. But you can't continue to say, I'm going to keep the same level of funding and expect to do the same amount of work every single year. All work goes up every year, right? Everything goes up. It's the same thing. We can keep doing the same amount of work, but if you're not infusing more money into it every single year, the money is going to stay the same, but the work's going to get reduced, right? Debt service or loans, payments. This is what you have for debt currently right now. This DPW debt that you see here for 117, that's fallen off after a year. So you can see 26, 27 fiscal year, the fiscal year that we're discussing, this one more payment, this 117.3, then it goes away. There's nothing here for future years. But you can see the streetscape debt, which we've estimated to be around this 112, 113, starts this year at the same time. So we didn't want to charge for both of these. So what we're doing is we're paying for this out of fund balance, this 117.3, that falls off, and then we don't have to do anything with the tax levy in order to meet that demand. And this shows you, and these debt schedules are provided by our bond counsel and whoever buys our debt, right? We know what these are going to be. They don't change. They're set. Okay? But you see, so, in 4 more years, we have some more debt falling off. So we can do some different things. Okay? These aren't fun things, but these are your liabilities, your debt load. Tax cap. So don't worry about all this. We just copy it on there because this is the calculation that we always talk about. This is why we pass that local law every year overriding the tax cap regardless of your ability or desire to do it. You have that ability to not do it even though you passed it. But what the tax cap says, it's essentially 2% or whatever inflation is, whatever's lower. So right now, the tax levy proposed is a $152,000 increase over last year's levy. The levy is the amount of money raised by taxes, right? So this year we're proposing to raise an extra $152,232 in taxes, which is a 4.26% increase. The tax levy allowed on our New York State tax cap calculation, we're allowed to raise and stay within the tax cap $85,297. So we're not 2%. We can raise taxes 2.39% and still be within that tax cap, okay? This budget proposal says that we'd like to override that by $66,935 or an additional 1.83%. So if you were to add the 2.39 and the 1.83%, I don't think it comes right out to 4.26%, but I think it's rounding and some of the other, there's some exclusions and stuff that happen within this calculation, but it's very, very close. Do you guys understand what's going on there? Trustee Briggs? Let me go through it
I
again.
understand that. I'm trying to find the that word, it's very clear, tax levy proposed,
Mm-hmm.
tax levy allowed, number over.
The
I'm just trying to
60,000.
find it right here. Is it in a paragraph form or something?
It's in your budget message, where we wrote this out. This is the tax cap calculation that you're seeing there. This is on the presentation, but it's also written in your budget message. But what's going on? Yeah, it's in there. She's looking at that. And we publish this presentation as well.
Okay.
Yep, this will be out there with everything. But that's written in your budget message, kind of explaining it a little bit further as well. So nothing is significant, but you can see just over the liabilities that you can control, you exceed your tax cap already, regardless of whatever you wanted to do, right? And that's why it's so important to have that ability at the board's discretion to override the tax cap, should you need to do it. And just to go from truly May 31st to June 1st, the way the certain controls, ERS, things that are mandated by the state, those alone, just health insurance alone, exceeded your tax cap, right? What else do you do? Okay, so the graph of all graphs, what does this really mean? What's going on? This all breaks it down for you. So the overview looks like this. Your taxable assessed valuation for this coming year proposed is $428 million, which is a 1% change or $4 million more of assessed value than the year prior. Now it's taxable assessed value. The value of all real property in the village is 600,000 or 600 million, I'm sorry, or somewhere around there. It includes everything that's on the books as of the year the town finalized their roll, this is actually last year's roll for the town. We're always a year behind. In next year, you'll notice that the town is doing their reval, everybody got their letters or getting them. So you're gonna think, well, gee, next year, this taxable assessed value is gonna go up drastically because homes are not worth 200 grand on average, or worth 400 grand on average. We're always a year behind on that. So you're gonna have one more year of this very stagnant growth in assessed valuation, which is okay, the numbers still work out, right? Because if the assessed value goes up and the levy stays the same, this tax rate will go down. So if the assessed value goes up to 900 million and we're not spending anymore, or I shouldn't say spending more, we're not needing to raise taxes anymore, you could spend more, but you can have other ways of meeting that expense load besides taxes, right? Sales tax or whatever. Then that tax rate technically would go down by 50%, right? So the levy in this case is going from 3.5 million to 3.7 million. Again, the amount of money raised by taxes, you're levying it on the residents, all right? So it's $152,000 or 4.26%. The rate, and the way that's important is you take the rate, which is, in this case, $8.68 per $1,000 of assessed valuation, right? So if you have a $100,000 house, it's $868 for every $100,000 of assessed value of your house. If you live in a $200,000 house, it's $1,700, right? So it's 3.31%. Well, why isn't it the same? Well, if you take this 0.92 and this 3.31, it gets you close to that 4.26%. Close. Okay. The median household per the assessor is about 180,000. Again, why does that make sense? Well, we're on a roll from last year from the town of Parenton. That will be the same. This same slide will be very similar next year, even though the full wide assessment is in effect from the town of Parenton, and in the following year, we'll start to see whatever that looks like and how that impacts the tax rate. Again, tax rate doesn't mean a whole lot. It's just a mechanism of providing an equitable taxation model for the assessed value in your community. So if that said $20 or it said $4, it really doesn't matter, right? The average tax bill, The average tax bill based on this proposal is $1,563, which goes up 3% or $45 for the entire year. So we're talking about $3.82 a month. Very, very reasonable. Name one bill of yours, an electric bill that doesn't go $45 in a month. We're talking about the full year, right? So this is a very, very good, competent budget that keeps this village moving in the right direction. We are doing $500,000 in paving. We're going to get another $500,000 in sidewalk work. We are moving the needle in every direction. We are still doing everything we want to do, and keeping ourselves afloat and doing well, and not reducing back on our service level for an extra $45 for the entire year per household. All right, so the general fund does go from, or this general fund budget goes, the spending that we're proposing from 7.6 million to 8.2 million, which is an 8% increase, or extra spending of 603,000. And it doesn't. It comes down to those 4 or 5 different things we talked about. It's so when you're speaking with your constituency, the current proposal says it's debt service, right? Loans, retirement, health insurance, personnel-related costs, and then just very much operational things that are just happening, but not a lot. Those are the things, are the major drivers that are happening within this budget. Megan, did I miss something? Okay. And with that, we're appropriating $147,000 in fund balance. If you were to do that, obviously you would have to levy. Your levy would be up another $150,000, which that would make that up to probably about 7.5% or 8% if we didn't do the fund balance appropriation that's being proposed today. And you should do it. That's what it's for. That one-time revenue that's unappropriated to meet that one-time expense, right? If we were saying, hey, let's do fund balance for this year for 150 grand for an expense that's ongoing indefinitely, that means that your structured expenses exceed your anticipated revenue. That's the biggest no-no in financial management you can do, right? You don't do that. You don't do it in your household. You definitely don't do it for the company you work for, right? That's not happening here. So it's a great use of it's a responsible use of what you're doing or what's being proposed. Does everyone understand this chart? Because this is what you're going to have to explain and understand and know, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is what people care about. Okay. This just shows that average tax bill that's being proposed, based out by service level or department. Right? Pretty straightforward. Any questions on the general fund? We get into capital real quick. Hey, an hour. We're doing pretty good. We're almost done. Any questions on any of that? Okay. I know there's a lot to digest, and you don't have to do it all now, but when you're sitting at home, go through this thing. We can give you guys some tape flags. They're great. Put it by your book and say, hey, I had a question on this, and shoot me an email or text or come and talk to me, and we can discuss those things and get the answers to what you want. Okay? So capital, nothing big here, nothing real dynamic, but again, keeping the operation moving and really down to village government services that you're really required to provide and should be doing. So the 10-year capital plan that's in here for this year, some of the stuff you're going to see is a kind of a carryover from the existing year to next year. Some work just didn't get done, didn't have time to do, a lot of things, but we're replacing the printer in Village Hall. It's about 12 years old, and I think that she was making a living by coming here every week. So it's time. We do centralized printing here, so we don't have printers on every desk. We have one printer, you get up, you walk, right? Everybody does it. And it's much easier to maintain just one. It makes more sense. And it keeps you from printing a lot. You don't want to have to get up and walk down the hallway 2 miles, it seems like, to print something. So you only print if you need it. So it really works out well. And we share this with Electric. We share it with OSED. And we share it with the village. So everybody pays for their copies and their portions of those contracts. So it's not all being borne by the village, which is great. It's a good partnership. Camera upgrades, we're always constantly doing that. We run about 40 to 50 cameras throughout the village between FMC and the general fund, or just the village. So we're always doing those and keeping up with that. We're looking at door access to be able to really control this building and other buildings, so we know who's coming in, when they're coming in. But also it's really good for, when people leave and come and go, which is a part of any organization naturally, it's like, do you have your key, and who did you give it to, and where is it at, and did we get that back? So be able to go through there and just turn it off when we know people are coming on, or hey, here's your key, it's turning on, and we know you're leaving in a week, and it automatically shuts off. So, and those key fobs are a couple bucks, and you just replace them. Front doors for the police department, those are rusting out and need to be replaced. So we'll be doing that with this year's budget pretty soon. And then a police car, which is an annual purchase we do every single year. Continuation with Main Street banners and/or any type of infrastructure and beautification on Main Street. We'll continue to do that. We're working on some some good Freedom 250 style banners and stuff to celebrate the 250th anniversary that's coming up on July 4th. So that's going to be fun. Museum HVAC upgrades. So the historical museum that's across the street. We're looking at some centralized heat and air there finally. It does get hot. This may or may not come out of cash appropriations that's planned for now if we're successful in that DRI. The museum does have a proposal in there in the DRI to do like an elevator, some second floor stuff, some other things. So if we're successful in that, I think we can probably include that in there, and that would fall off the books here as a liability. So that's a good thing, but we're really hopeful that's going to happen. Street surfacing, mill and fill work. So mill and fill is just paving work. We'll be doing about 500 grand of that. And we'll be doing Elm Street, West Street, Clinton Place, and Jackson Place this year. We're doing another $500,000 in sidewalk replacement. This is great. The sidewalk work that we've been doing is amazing, and we're doing full streets and we do this now, really comprehensive approaches to how you do infrastructure work. So if we're working on a street, milling it, we're doing the tree trimming. We're replacing the gutters. We're looking at storm lining. We're checking out the sanitary sewer. We're removing trees that have exceeded their growth area, right, and planting proper things. And so when we walk out of there, we're not coming back every single year trying to look at the other entity that's responsible in the village and the public purview, right, and then messing up that infrastructure that we just laid down a year or two ago. So you'll see a lot of this stuff. The sidewalk replacements are going to be on East Street, Frank Street, Maple Street, Hart, and East Avenue. But there's another $250,000 proposed in here to do all the streets that we're doing work on, right, and paving. We're going to go in and replace sidewalks on those streets that needed to, when and where they need to have it. So you're really looking at these comprehensively. So when we walk out of there, we're not going back there for the next 4 years disturbing these folks, making a dust bowl and having crews in front of their house for the next 4 or 5 years. No one likes it. It is a process of if people don't want to be burdened with that kind of thing. They love to have the new work done and have their street give attention to, but going through the process is a monotonous task.
The
Yes.
sidewalks on Frank Street are particularly, they're bad.
We know. They are. They really are.
You're either on a hill that's a lift from a tree, or you're in a puddle because there are low spots. And having walked a lot around the neighborhood in the last month through the freeze and thaw cycles, they're really bad.
Yep.
The people who live on Frank Street will be very happy.
Yep. Good. Oil and stonework. So that's very necessary for continued maintenance of streets. So you should be on a street after paving it about every 7 years or so to continue to put a wear surface. And that's oil and stone, all it is. It's a wear surface on top of your existing pavement that provides longevity in any pavement, especially in a climate like this. We throw salt down like it's nobody's business, creates cracks and voids, and that oil and that stone gets pushed into those cracks and provides a wear surface and some weatherization sealing, if you will. We're doing about 90 grand this year proposal. We've got to remember, when we started this, this is our third year going into this. We only did 30,000. You think, well, gee, that's not a lot of money. Like when it comes to street work, 90 grand in oil and stone world is a lot of money. A truck comes by, they just spray oil down, and then you have a specific type of stone that comes in there to fill in those voids. You can do a lot of work on that. Currently we're doing the entire neighborhood, really Upper Winding Brook, Misty Pine, Red Maple, Silver Birch, Blue Spruce, Butternut Circle, and White Alder, right? And all of those have a brand new wear surface that'll probably last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Until we can actually get in there and start paving the things that we want to and so forth. But that's natural to do that anywhere. And it's one of the best programs this village started doing, and it should have been done for the last 50 years. It's inexpensive. It provides great value for long-term and longevity with your infrastructure. And we're really getting it down to a science with our partners and how we're going about doing it. The Northeast Canal Bank footprint. So that's the stuff we talked about last year. We're replacing right now it's brick pavers. It's the footpath over there by BME and the Box Factory parking lot and so forth. So the reason it's not done is solely it's by design. That work was going to happen this spring, but because it's included in the DRI on a much more comprehensive level, if we are successful in that DRI and doing some canal bank work, we're going to include that in there as well. So we're not using 200 grand of cash from village coffers in an effort to do that. So we want to see if we're successful. If great, we'll incorporate that in there, right? Because remember, that whole process is going to start over, and we can kind of redefine what that scope of work is for those projects. But if it doesn't materialize, we've appropriated the money so we can go and do the work as intended. Okay? Yes?
What kind of work is it gonna be?
Well, just replacement of that footpath. So we're going to rip up the brick, probably put down some type of concrete or stamped concrete or something. It hasn't been fully defined yet, but we want to clean up that area between the box factory parking lot and that area, because it's got a bunch, there's like a 5-foot grass median area, and grass doesn't grow there. And we have these droughts and so forth, so really making that a nice area where you can provide seating and a much more area. You can incorporate games if you guys want to, or we can incorporate different benches. Just making it a much more nicer area to maintain. Right now, it needs some work. It's really challenging. There's tons of liabilities associated with raised brick, how water's funneling, water's not draining. We have issues with a lot of the boat stanchions need to be replaced on that side. They're kind of aged out. Right now, we're eBaying parts because they don't make them for the existing models that are out there. We're keeping them up, but so it needs a full refresh and revamp, right? And it can be whatever we choose it to be. But we know we want to do some work there, and we've appropriated some money to do that.
Is there any drainage issues on that side?
There's drainage issues associated with the existing pavement having a lot of bellies in it, where it's not happening. We're not having any drainage where it's, nothing's sheet draining off of private property onto that area. I mean, it all sheet drains naturally into the canal. But the problem is there's a lot of puddling if you go over there just due to the settling. I mean, landscape brick pavers and those types of things, they look great the day they put them in, but they're not really used for a commercial spot like that or space because they eventually settle like anything does. And the ability to go and raise those up and put them in a proper place is challenging. So I think we can find something that looks just like that, any color, anything we want to do, but put it in a way that requires less maintenance and a much more safer traveling environment. So it'll be nice. It'll look good. We can define the things or amenities you guys want to put there. But I'm hopeful that the DRI is successful for us and we can incorporate that in there. In addition to we want to replace on the southeast side kind of the bumper rails associated with how the boats dock and where they tie off on. We need to build some better retaining walls there right now. The 80s pine things that are not really there anymore. They're rotting. I mean, anytime you put wood in the ground, there's a useful life in which that's going to survive. So maybe looking at that, how that's graded back, re-looking at that space. But all that can be defined as part of that DRI process, show it materialize. We'll start over and say, hey, this is a viable project. What can really happen here? What could we do here, right? And that'll be a good exercise. It'll be fun, because anything we do, there's going to be better than what we have now, right? So you guys can determine that if and when we get that. And if we don't, well, we're going to eventually plan for doing that work ourselves, because it's going to need it.
Because I know last year on the south side, we had drainage issues and pipes and stuff that, were collapsed and needed to be replaced.
We did all that, yeah.
And pressure washed all the brick. So we're not touching the south side. We're gonna leave that as is and go over to the north.
Well, we've done, there's more work to be had over there, trust me, on the southeast side. But we did a lot of work and a lot of improvements. There was a lot of settling. There was a lot of ponding. We did find there's a lot of areas where that brick, which is really, it's not even a brick, it's like a brick veneer that's half-inch thick at best, was broken and so forth. So we got rid of a lot of those stub toes. We fixed some water lines that we were having some issues with. We were having some depressions that were forming. So generally when you have a depression and something like that, it's water is infiltrating underneath there. You pull that up and you find, I don't want to, for lack of a better term, a sinkhole. It's being washed away. So we repaired all those to what our knowledge is. I mean, in my opinion, I think the brick that's there needs to be replaced with something eventually. It is not conducive to maintenance. It's not conducive to longevity, and we will continue to chase that throughout its life that's moving forward. So, but we'll see how much money we get and what we can do. But, right now there is a surface that we can work with for a while, but, the immediate The immediate needs or liabilities over there are that wood bumper rail, that how it was attached, how it was designed, in my opinion, is inferior. Of how it's attached to the wall, how it was secured, and it just needs to be replaced. But it's a significant thing where, in order to do that, you have to do it in a time where you're either in the summer messing up a boat season, right, because you're working on that side, or you wait to the winter time, which is probably what's going to happen, and you barge up to it, and then they have a barge platform that they're doing all the work on the side of that canal path, and that's probably what's going to happen. So all stuff that has to be planned out and worked out. I'd like to not lose a boat season and keep that open, and we work that out through the winter. And I think it's a very possible thing to do for lack of disruption. But again, all that work and scope of work can be defined if we're successful in what we do.
I guess just the way my mind works, we started on the south side, did all that work, and now, but we didn't finish it yet, and then we're going to the north side. So that was my confusion.
They did work on the north side pavements last year as well.
Well,
They were out cleaning
oh, they
that-
cleaned
that
it a bunch of
pavement.
stuff, but it
Yeah.
eventually needs to be addressed. There's
Yeah,
a
it does.
significant settling issue between the Canal Corp's concrete wall of the canal and where that meets non-canal property and underneath that footpath, and it needs to be addressed. It's not if and when there's an issue or there's a collapse or there's some other type of erosion. It's not that if we're not leaving the southeast side, but I mean, to do the southeast side the way we're describing or you'd like to have, you need $2 million, right? So it's something where hopefully with this DRI, the project was identified, it's in the DRI application, and to do that extra work because it's significant, it's comprehensive, and it's going to touch a lot of things. It's going to touch drainage. It's going to touch how do you keep the water coming? Because remember, most of the southeast bank slopes toward the footpath. How do you keep that water out there consistently? All drainage eventually has to get worked on, and it starts to collapse. What do you do there? How's the grading going to work? Retaining walls. What's the impact of all the trees? Because the retaining walls are probably going to push all that back some. There's just a lot of things to address. That's why I'm excited about the DRI. We can go have a fresh approach about that. We're not confined to a specific dollar amount. If we're saying, hey, we only want to put 500 grand, what do we do and what don't we do, right? That scope can be defined based on the appropriation the state's going to allow us to have. And if that's the case, we're going to go for the jugular. We're going to go for all of it, right? And maximize that potential. We're a waterfront community. They know that. That is our defining asset that we have for economic development and really just placemaking. So that should be emphasized, and I think a significant investment is appropriate for that area. And I think we'll be successful in that. Should we, get the DRI and we can determine what that scope is. But to go out and put significant money over there and not address the other things that are eventually going to impact that, I think would be short-sighted. So it could be something where, even if it doesn't get incorporated into the full scope of what the DRI is going to support with a public project, it doesn't mean that the board can't piggyback on that with its own project, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's a $4 million project and $2 million is only going to be covered, but why do only that? You can bond for it, you can appropriate cash, you can do whatever it is that you want, right? So we have options. We're not limited on scope.
I think this is a reasonable expectation that's living within what we have available in our capital
That's what it
plan
is.
to get started, and then we see what else we can get accomplished.
But, the 200 grand that we're looking at just to make these improvements here, it's replacing all of this and fixing this massive depression that's forming here. You can see it in the picture. 200 grand is not going to do anything on the southeast side. It's not going to buy paint. We need money, and it's in the 7-figure range. That's where we're at. It's going to be significant. And it's not a bad thing. It's just everything has its useful life expectancy. It needs to be replaced. We will deal with it, and we will address it, but it needs to be something that's comprehensive. It's going to be a bond project for this village should we not get assistance with a grant, whether it be DRI or some other effort that we come up with. But it's a 7-figure project. And if we're going to go through the interruption of what it's going to take to do some of that work, I say you go do it all. Do it all, get it done, and walk away for 30 years. Do it right.
So just in closing, back to what's on the north side, what exactly is let's just go back to what we're originally talking about. here.
Sure.
So we're gonna take up all the brick that's there and put in something different.
Probably a concrete surface of some sort. Yeah.
But we're not touching the wall, but we will touch,
This wall's great. This is a concrete wall, a rub
Yeah,
wall,
that's a
built
canal
totally
wall.
different. The wall on this side, it's got a design rub rail that's, we can go out there and I can show it to you, but it's got this all thread that it's kind of the connection of what's holding that, for lack of a term, rub rail on there is just all thread that is core drilled into the side of the embankment. That's it. So it just sits there in its own water and saturation and the weight of that. Like anything, you got boats that are moving with wind or whatever, tugging on all of that, constantly wearing on those core drilled holes. I mean, you can see the design flaw in which it was attached and how it was done. I mean, right now, I can take you out there, grab a rail and do this, and it shakes the whole rub rail, but it shakes it for 30 feet in every direction. Right?
but on the north side, it's fine.
Correct, that we don't have that issue at all. It's complete concrete, right, surface. It's completely different than where it is on the southeast side and how that was built. The rub rails that are on here are actually attached just truly, they're like 4-inch by 12-inch rub rails that are completely fastened and attached to the face of the wall. So those are in really, really good shape. But the southeast side, they're kind of standalone rub rails.
Now, that's, on the north side, there's private property, right, of the box factory in the parking lot. So would the project, this beautification project, would it start at the parking lot and come forward? Because I don't know where,
It'll start at our property line. It's really with the Canal
Where?
Corp's property line, I should say.
where is that?
It is not up to the parking lot. There is a 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot buffer from there, but I'm sure we can get a grading release from the property owner, which we do that for almost all projects.
Okay.
When there's an abutment that has to be adjoined, otherwise it's gonna look pretty silly when we artificially stop a project, a beautification project, to match another one, right? So generally we get grading releases. We do this for almost everything to make that connection point so it's seamless across.
Thank you, that
Yeah.
answered my question
Good.
as to where it was, and we get
Yep.
like a little weed path, it's just gonna be
Yeah,
smaller.
it's technically none of it's ours. It's Canal Corp, Blue Line, to private property. We just maintain it, right, and make the investments.
And then the other piece of that was replacing those wooden posts, the tacking line. So it's the sidewalk, the surface, and then,
Yep. Yep, it's time. It's time for
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
updates on some of that, and that's okay. It's nothing to be embarrassed about or worried about. I mean, we'll address it, and work through that process to get it done at some point. But it's not something you just go out and do. You need significant investment, time, and it's one of those things we've talked about in length in-house. You don't want to get in there and have to do this thing piecemealed over 10 years and the interruption that happens within that corridor and its vitality. I'd rather get in there once, feel the pain, right? Stick the knife in once, then be done and do it. And it'll be beautiful and nice. But I think there's ways to plan that where we can kind of plan it to where we don't have a significant impact on the boating season and so forth. Okay. So we'll continue with street drainage gutters. We do that about $175,000 a year in that, and that's going to coincide with the streets that we're working on. We never got through the door security locks, but the prices that came in superseded the budget we had for last year, so that was put on hold. This is a
Glenn,
nice,
Real quick, is that different from the door access upgrade?
it is. We have facilities throughout the entire village, no matter what we do, whether it be a historical museum or here,
fair enough.
or
Okay,
doors in
gotcha.
a building or anything else. I mean,
Yeah,
there's,
okay. Whereas the other one is just for Village Hall, Police Department, Fire Stations.
it looks like a circus ring of 400 different keys.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
That's all.
We call it the MBT Bank parking lot, but it's for lack of a better term. But there's a public access easement that the village negotiated into about the 70s, where that really is a driveway for that bank. And I think it became, by naturally, people utilize that as a cut through to get to this parking lot. So they're like, well, that's naturally going to happen because like anything, the public takes the path of least resistance, right? And so they were utilizing that as a cut through. The village at that point in time made it, and we can get out of it any time, but entered into a public access easement. So anytime that there is an improvement for infrastructure in that area, we pick up 50% of the costs associated with doing so. If you've ever driven through there, which I do 5 times a day, parking back here, it's a crater, right? It's a moon crater. So this has been in the works for about 3 years now. It's finally materializing. We finally have their money secured in our coffers. We negotiated a deal. We wrote up a contract and a whole thing last fall to get it done, and we did it before the change in ownership again happened between was Fairport Bank we started with, then it went to Evans, and then it went to here. So when those mergers are happening, nobody puts money into an existing facility that you're going to, right? So that kept getting pushed off and pushed off. So we have that money held in escrow right now. We have an escrow agreement that we drafted to make sure that happens. They'll end up paying 60 to 7% of the total cost because some of the money associated with this project, we're going to use our village forces to do some of this work. But all that's going to be paved and cleaned up, and you will no longer have that S-curve through there, almost hitting the building. It's going to be straight shot. There'll be a sidewalk on the southern side of that, so you can walk through there, not walk in the driving lane. So now you can get to your car, get a pizza, all those things now versus driving and parking in the roadway that people do now. So long time coming. The bank's excited about it, and we'll be including that work this year. Okay?
Quick question. So the 54 is our half, and then the bank's putting in another 50?
Nope, that's the full cost right now. And we'll split that. We have about half of that or a little bit more in escrow, and the agreement will allow us for, that's what we think it's gonna be. There's always unknown, stuff happens, 50 grand more later, they're responsible for any of those types of add-ons that are gonna happen as the project materializes. Yeah, we negotiated all that in.
I'm gonna think there's tree damage back there too, or there was a
There
tree.
is, those 2 trees are not ours, they're coming out, and that light that's back there is coming out. There was some wisdom behind that access agreement where the responsible areas between the parties, the lighting system and the trees, which they planted, what are they called? Anyway, they're very shallow root systems, and they have crushed the Salvatore's parking lot and that, and all that's going to have to get grinded, pulled up. That silly, that nice railing, 4-inch galvanized pipe.
It's kind of
rub
yellow,
rail.
kind of gray, kind of rusted.
All that's getting yanked out. It's going to be nice. It's a long time coming, and you'll have a nice path getting traffic in and out of there in a nice area. I mean, it got to the point where we weren't moving very quick, and we were like, basically, I told him, I'm like, you know what, at this point, and it's so challenging, and we're having people come through here thinking it's our problem that this isn't getting done. We'll just give you 30 days notice. We'll get out of the access agreement. We have 4 entrances to this lot. You don't need them. And by doing so, you could get rid of that liability. You could get rid of the light, right? Because you don't need it anymore for that entrance way. And you can still get in this lot right here by the Packett's Landing Drive, right next to Village Hall on the north side. So that was kind of a quick thing. Hey, if you want to keep that open, then do so. But they knew if the public aspect got away, they still wouldn't be able to control cars using it as a cut through anyway. So hey, let's do this and get it done. But trying to do something when there's mergers and other parties getting involved, it just made things really, really complicated. But it doesn't really matter. We're there now. It's going to be a nice project. It's going to be a really, really nice asset to access our parking lot behind Village Hall, and we're excited to do it. So is the bank. The village parking lot in front of our building, that conversion and stuff will be happening this spring. While it's in this budget, we might be able to incorporate that into the remaining streetscape funds we have through that grant. So it may not actually come from cash. So we're looking at how we incorporate some of that work into the contractor, the GC, the general contractor for the streetscape project is going to be coming back this spring to do a lot of maintenance and warranty work, things that didn't survive. You know, some of the sidewalk didn't materialize and spalled as we had discussed last year would probably happen. Didn't help that was 30 million pounds of salt that we're putting on it over the summer, over the winter. You can't put salt, even calcium chloride, on virgin concrete. It doesn't work. It doesn't mix. So a lot of our concrete, a lot of our sidewalk was damaged because of that. So they'll be replacing some of that, replacing some of the trees. Some of the trees weren't planted at the size they should have been. A lot of the restoration work associated with the grass areas and all those right-of-ways, all that's going to get replanted and redone. A lot of settling that happened over the winter, which is fine. But we want to get into that really, really quick. So we had some meetings over the last couple of weeks, and our public works superintendent's going to have them coming in very, very shortly, start getting that out of here. So when we ramp up for a warmer season, we're not in here with construction cones again, right? So get in and get out, that type of thing. So hopefully that work can be covered under the grant, and we're not taking that from our capital funds. Okay. Village Landing parking lot, so we still need to do some engineering work. I don't know if the grants associated with the Village Landing lot and some of our other lots that we're getting are going to materialize for this construction season. If they do, we can probably incorporate some of that work into the fall. But right now, we're just going to do some design work, make sure that we're looking at everything, slope, drainage, all those types of things, access points, the garage that's over, the entrance to the garage, whether we keep that or not, what's going on. We did do some traffic counts and so forth. You and I were talking about that. So that's what we're going to be doing this spring until something else materializes. In addition, just truck replacements, public works, a street sweeper, that needs to be replaced. If you cut everything outside of this budget, please keep that. It's such an important piece of machinery for what we do. If it doesn't show in Main Street and West Church and all these other streets, you're not looking hard enough. But our current system is about 17 years old. It's got a 2-engine system on it. It's just, for what we do and how we do it, especially with the oil and stone work, it's a highly abrasive service. We need to get another one. It's down a lot more than it's actually running. This thing should be running every single day as long as we have a person to drive it. I want it running. It's important for our storm sewers. It's important for our sanitary sewers. It's important to keep weaves off of your granite curb line. And quite frankly, when you see a curb line that's swept and clean without crap on it, it just looks like a different place, right? It's the difference between looking like you don't care and one that you do, right? So when it's not running, it's generally because it's down. We may keep the old one to use for those one-stone work when you're sweeping up that extra stuff because it just beats the heck out of that metal as that stone rubs against those metal internal parts. It just wears holes in it, and it's a problem.
And our current one, you said, is 17 years old?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Regardless of age, I mean, it just needs to be replaced. It's hit its useful life space. Everything is failing on it. We're getting significant failures. And I think we should keep it. We'll determine that. There's no harm in keeping it outside of room for a backup, but it can't be a frontline system anymore. It's just not, it's not reliable anymore. But if there's a piece of equipment that changes the look and feel of your community, that's it. All right, additional sweeper to help out with our sidewalks and keeping some of that snow removal off there, not just in the downtown area, but other sidewalks. We're going to try utilizing that on other streets. I think it can work really well and try something different and really get down to the sidewalks, as you know. I mean, if you're a runner or a walker, once the sidewalks get done, if the private property owners don't get down there to get the remaining last inch or two that the blades may not get, once it's walked on like anything, and like if you drive on your driveway, the moment you drive on snow before you plow it off your driveway, it packs into ice and you'll never get it up. Same thing here. This might help in that regard, and we're going to try it out. I think it'll work. This thing really ramps up and sweeps well. So we'll use that piece of equipment to do that. I think it will be a game changer.
Is this similar or the same thing that DPW has been borrowing from
Very similar.
FMC?
Very similar.
And how did they find it worked so far?
It works
this
really
winter?
well. It's a little different in the downtown because we can't, the PTO, the power takeoff that turns that and rotates it, if you put it on its full power takeoff mode, it just flings this stuff all over, and it's just kind of tough in a commercial corridor when you got facades and parked cars right on the roadway and stuff. If we're on a side street, this thing will fling it and go. So sometimes it looks like you're going a little slow. It's not because they are slow. It is because the environment in which they're working and how this operates, it doesn't allow you can't go any further without maybe causing some damage, right? So it just takes some time. But I think it has some big usefulness in the sidewalks throughout the community, and it goes very, very quickly. And I was really worried about, Jason convinced that, I was like, this thing's gonna wear out very quickly. You're talking something touching that abrasive of a level on a hard surface, we're replacing this thing every month. And he's like, no, the material that it's used, it's meant for that. So that's great.
First thing, the merchants loved it. That was their favorite sidewalk snow removal this year, so it got a lot of great support from our merchants in the downtown area. Question, where I live, my sidewalks have got damage.
Yeah, it needs
So
some
I
work.
can see the sidewalk plow guy stop, like at mid of my neighbor's yard, lift it up, because the sidewalk
Yeah,
is so
they are. I run
uneven.
on yours 4 times a week past your house, and there are stub toes in that area and trees. And
But I'm wondering, could this clean the sidewalks that are uneven like that?
We're gonna try
Because
it. Yes,
it's
it
a
will.
spinning thing
it will.
across?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, we don't have to raise it or lower it. It'll adjust to the ground that it's in, and it will be used on South Main and Church for those major areas that get packed and a lot of high use.
I'm thinking that's an awesome, wonderful, positive
So we'll see
thing.
if it works. It's slower than obviously than driving a blade down, but I think for those areas that more traffic that are, I don't think you can use it on every little Frank and everything other street in the world. But those areas that are high use, you really want to get that off there before the traffic really packs it down. Because once it's packed, it's there for weeks, right? It doesn't go
And they
away.
can't
Right.
get it good clean.
You can't
know,
get it clean,
they're
and then
losing
also
a
when it
lot of
snows on it
money.
again 3 days later, it keeps building up. So you're like, man, the sidewalks aren't being plowed. Well, it's this thick now of ice, and it stays there with cold temperatures for 3 months. So
So I'm saying for 13 grand, this could be a wonderful thing.
try it out.
Yeah, let's try it.
So a new leaf machine, nothing big about that. Collection box, I'm sorry. This is another piece of equipment that's going to help with some of those snow blowing equipment. We're going to start snow blowing sidewalks too. I think that can be a big changer, and it's all tracked. A couple pickup trucks for the fire department associated with first response and fire police. And then a big one is a new engine for the fire department. They're looking at about a 3-year build plus. So if we can get that order this year, as long as it doesn't, we don't have to pay for that until it's delivered in 3 years. I think it works out from a monetary standpoint. Otherwise, the way bonding works, and when we have other debt falling off, it might be a challenge. This is a conversation that we'll be having with the town of Parenton, since they are our partner in this, right? We are built up and staffed and organized in a way for our fire department where we don't need to be at the level we're at with the equipment that we have if we don't have this fire protection agreement, right? The services contract to meet that service area. So we want to make sure that we're partners for long term, right? That we're buying this and we're accruing debt, that should they say, hey, next year we don't want to do it anymore, that we didn't buy this piece of $1 million equipment that has a 20-year debt load on it that we're stuck with, right? We don't need 8 fire engines to serve 1.5 square miles in the village of Fairport. So these are conversations we need to have, but also when you incur debt like this or you go in to buy something like this, it's a financing issue where if they're paying a portion of that, we're always a year behind, so are we absorbing that from a cash flow perspective inadvertently? Kind of challenging for us in a smaller budget. They should know it's coming, even though they get our capital plans and we provide them with everything that you see from a fire perspective. They get it all every year, down to the dollar, nothing hidden. But hey, next year when your appropriation to us goes up $150,000 for debt or cash or whatever that appropriation is going to be, you're like, well, gee, that's not like your typical 2% increase every year. It's something significant. You need to know it's coming. You need to plan for that. They need to build it in their operating budget, in their plan, in their levy. So they're our partners in this. So Megan and I will be having these conversations with them about long-term because there are some capital needs for the fire departments. There are trucks, a couple trucks coming up real quick, and they're very close together. I'd like to not get into a situation where we're bonding for a lot of these trucks. $1.3 million truck, you'll pay $1.8 million before it's paid off in interest. I'd rather not get into that. Since I've been here, we went to a cash basis for these types of vehicles. There's philosophies behind that, but you can really get underwater on some of these things pretty quickly. especially the depreciation value of these assets. So I want to talk to them about that, see if they have a financial mindset that mirrors that or not. But we need to figure out what we do, because there's significant cost to doing a bonding site, and then it's a lot of work on our end to do that. But if we're going to do a cash basis moving forward, because right now the fund that we have and the appropriations coming from the town and how we're funding it can't meet this liability that's in the books for the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's in the red. So how we meet that liability, if we need to start infusing more cash from the town instead of giving them a big payment later, hey, add another $100,000 a year, so we'll have some money when this comes in, but that's something they need to be aware of now and be planning for. They should be anyway. This has been in the plan for 10 years. They get it every single year, but I think there needs to be a face-to-face conversation about it. There's a new supervisor over there. I think she needs to be educated on kind of what this partnership is, what it does, what are the expense load and liabilities associated with running an operation like this, right? And how that's just going to be funded in the future. So we're looking at that.
Is Parenton, just thought of this, is Parenton's budget, because ours goes from June to, July, that mid-year. Is theirs on a fiscal year, or their budget on the same cycle as ours?
No, they're on the calendar year.
That's what I thought, okay.
I missed the calendar year. Cities are that way, and they're so much easier. So additional stuff, we're going to do some roof replacement, full roof replacement on Station 2. We had analysis done, it needs to be done. Thermal imaging cameras for the fire department are in here. Some Knox box replacements, those are like key boxes on side of buildings, right? Some ice rescue equipment, but also Station 1 restoration. So what that is Station 1 being the station on East Church. As you know, we've identified there was some mold that was in the second floor, in the basement of that building. There's a design flaw associated when the building was built, and there's parts of that wall that you can just move by pushing on it. And it's more the northwest wall of that in the basement, and it's contributed to a lot of things. There's a vapor barrier that wasn't put in well. There are drainage that comes from an ADA walk behind that building that the water has nowhere to go, so it sits there and seeps between the sidewalk that abuts that building and the brick veneer. When you put brick on a building, there's always about a 1 or 2 inch gap there, so that water's getting there, it can't escape, so it grows and festers. So this was going to happen the day it was built and designed, and it's just being identified now. But we have someone coming in. They can't get in until early April, I believe. Servpro to come in there, and they're going to remove most of the walls and interiors within that kind of a training room space. If you've ever been to Station 1 in the basement, all that's going to be kind of gutted. And then we don't really know the full extent of what remediation and restoration has to happen, but I see a lot of the interior walls being reframed out with galvanized posts and then re-drywalled, but I don't want to do that unless we fix the problem. So we need to figure out what are the vapor issues, what needs to happen. We can go back in there and say, heck with it for 20 more years, but it's just going to happen again. So we need to identify what it is. We have about $200,000 for that remediation work, and that's not including the work that has to happen in a month, which is going to be 6 figures. And insurance has denied that claim due to the reasons I just identified to you. So faulty craftsmanship, there was some interior things. We had wall coverings of some very thick vinyl, and it's old, wallpaper that created a vapor barrier in there, so water and air couldn't go between the drywall and the other wall and escape. That was probably put in 20 or 30 years ago. There's just a lot of little things. There's no fault to be had around, but it's being identified now and it needs to be addressed. So it's not that it's significant, but there's other design things. There's things in Station 1, if you ever sit in like their bar area, they decided one day to cover an outside kind of patio area that's down there with like a glass atrium. Well, they didn't put the flashing in right, so water's been getting behind in that brick and creating an issue as well. That's a complete construction flaw when it was put in. So there's just a lot of little things that, when you're starting looking at some possible causes that need to be, before we go in there and fix all the interior, you need to make sure your building envelope is correct and suitable so that when you go in there and make those repairs, that it's not it's not gonna happen again, and it's just a time thing, so. We'll take care of it. I'm not worried about it. It's just time and money, right? And, but these are also costs that the town and us are gonna have to have a conversation about, right? And, you know, we're maintaining the stations, like any asset meets a life expectancy, needs repair. Every home, you need to be doing something in your home every single year. Otherwise, if you go 20 years and don't touch it, everything has to be touched, right? And so no other building or asset's any different. So we'll be looking at that. Sewer fund, we'll move through this quick. There's nothing big here. We have a $490,000 budget. We'll continue to do the same thing that we always do. The charge for sanitary sewer fund is $175 per parcel. That's not being changed or increased with this budget. We'll continue to do lining that we've always been doing. It's a great program. It's humming along very well. We'll continue to do televising and imaging and documentation of all our sanitary sewer collection systems. And this budget continues to do that. Let's see. We are using a little fund balance because we want to spend a little more money than what we have coming in the with our receivables for the sewer rents. But that's okay. I think we're sitting on about $400,000 or $500,000 in fund balance in the sewer fund. Again, that's not over taxation. We have about $20 million worth of liabilities. So, and that's just if we're lining everything. So we're taking that money and just doing projects with it. Okay, so it's not just going to sit there and collect it at all. We'll spend every dollar of it. Sanitaries, if we got $10 million tomorrow, we could spend $10 million tomorrow on that system. Okay. Electric fund, we're going to skip for the night. Electric personnel will be here on Monday night to discuss this in length with you about the electric fund and what's going on. Okay, so we'll skip through that, and that's really our presentation and what we have in our proposal. So, you know, if there's any questions you want to talk about now, we can do that, but I encourage you to take the time between now and Monday night to kind of go through that. I really want to be clear that don't hesitate to pose questions, options. This is your budget. These are just recommendations based on our experience about how to operate what you should be doing, or at least thinking about. But you can change projects, change purchases, things that you want to do. Please feel free to do that.
Would you
But I
prefer
think you're in a good
that
start.
you received those prior to the meeting on Monday? If it's
If you
about
have the
Monday?
ability and you want to document those so we can prepare for those, so we're not sitting here like, you know, whatever, be great. Send those via email, and that way we can formulate the responses. And some of these things just might require some investigation or some review. I think most things, there's very few things probably in here that Megan or I can't speak to off the cuff. But if there's not, we can get the information and be ready to go for Monday, so we're not wasting time or having additional meetings we don't need to have. So, but I think you're in a really good position with this budget. I'm proud of it. You know, when you're talking about running a municipality and it only costing you $40 more a year, it's pretty good. And it's something that I think, you know, when we started this, we were at 12%, and we're at 4.2 now as far as a levy increase. I'm really proud of that. We were nervous about where we were going, especially seeing some of the major operating expenses that are, you know, healthcare, retirement coming in where they were coming in. But, you know, we had some hard conversations with staff about the budget process, what we were doing, our expectations, and they came in, they really held their contractual costs to similar limits as last year. I'm not sure how, I don't really care, because we got the result we wanted. It won't always be like that, but, you know, we had an increase last year that was more than probably anybody wanted to do, right? It was all past our comfort zone. None of us wanted to present something like that again, regardless of, we can't control the expenses, right? We put it all together and tell you the story and what's going on. I mean, they're not our fault or your fault. Some of these things are what they are, and we got to live within it. You feel these expenses or these percentage increases, which, you know, sometimes scare people, but when you have a smaller budget like ours, small increases in money add up to bigger percentage dollars, right? So when you're looking at a 4% increase in a levy, which back if you looked 15 years ago was unheard of, like, oh my God, a 4% increase, we're talking about $40 now, right? So it's not that significant. But I mean, I think, you know, my first 10 years in this business, other places, if you gave anything above a 3 or a 2, they wanted to kick you out of the building, right? And it's like, so just different times and how things are really just have increased. And the cost to do business is just challenging. But I'm proud of this budget. I think it's a very competent budget. I think it continues to do the things that I think you guys have said you wanted to do. that the community expects and continues to move this village forward. We're not reducing services. We're continuing to invest, and that's something you should be proud of. So take a look at it. If you have any questions, call me right away. We'll get to it. Okay?
I think the team has done a great job of holding the line, but yet still investing in our infrastructure, which I think there are many communities that are very challenged because they're old and things are falling apart, and there's no money to deal with the fact that prices go up every single day, and the price of doing business and maintaining that is this impossible challenge, because the costs continue to go up, and the community, many communities, not ours. I'm really impressed with the work that we've done over the last few years to really change how we do sidewalks, to change how we pave roads, that things are getting done with not expecting a 40-year life a life expectancy of so many things. It's impressive. And I think we owe a thank you to the village team for coming in with these numbers.
The key is, if we get this DRI, it's a game changer for this village about what we can do and how we can capitalize on these projects and some of these investments and really move some of these projects, especially the private sector projects that are kind of in a stall mode for a variety of reasons as challenging projects. But the identification of the 3 or 4 public projects that are in there to do something to make those improvements or just, capitalize on those spaces a little bit better is huge. And I think the opportunity just to go through that process to reimagine some of these things and just to make some investments are probably not going to be priorities for you based on just time and money and in the near future. But if you have something like this that you're able to leverage in order to make some investments in those areas, it's going to be a good thing, right? Because in the end, there's always expenses that are going to take, hey, this is a priority over maybe looking at a park or looking at this or a canal corridor or something. But we're really hopeful that we get this. And if we don't, we're not going to put our heads down. We're going to reapply again next year and kick some butt. But that's a huge project. And I think we'll be successful.
Does anyone else have any last comments before I move on to the next item? Okay.
And I believe you already did, Megan said that we already did the public hearing, didn't we? So I'm
think
sorry
we-
about that.
I think we said already, but I figured if we needed to, we'd do it again.
I didn't remember when she said it to me in here. I'm like, okay, we did. So, thank you.
It's already posted.
All right, so we can skip over item number 2, which is the public hearing, which will take us to item number 3, which is a motion by the village board to adjourn. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
By trustee Briggs.
Second.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Somebody's making noise over here. Trustee Waika, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Then we'll call it night 1 is done, and we'll see you on Monday to talk about this further. Again. Okay. And again, a reminder, if you have any questions or concerns, that you do your best to forward them along to Village Manager White before Monday afternoon, if all possible. And that will help them prepare for the meeting on Monday. Thank you. Have a good night.